the last ship to transport African slaves to the U.S. may have been found. The Clotilda brought over 100 slaves to Alabama on the eve of the Civil War. It was illegal to import slaves into the U.S. The ship's owners knew they had to cover their tracks.
They brought the ship up the bay at night, towed behind a steamboat. They'd taken the mast down to hide it. They snuck it around the port of Mobile up into this river system, and they actually unloaded all of the slaves into the swamp for 2 weeks to hide them because they were scared to take them to their plantations. Then they burned the ship to hide the evidence.
That's the final resting place of the Clotilda.
The story of the Clotilda fascinated journalist Ben Raines.
In all the years since then, nobody's ever known where the ship was except perhaps close relatives of the men who perpetrated this incredible crime. So I just decided to go looking for it, more as almost an adventure, just to see if we could find it, this, infamous shipwreck. One of the things I did was to call all the old timers, and one of them gave me a location that seemed really plausible. It was close to where the captain said he burned the ship. It wasn't on any of the previous searches I knew of. And when I asked the guy, well, why do you think it's there? He said, well, we'd go fishing up the Mobile River, we'd drive by there, and Daddy and his friends would say, there's the Clotilda, when we saw this big burned out ship.
Then Raines went out fishing himself.
On January 2nd, I went out to look for it. The tide was extremely low. Got out there, it was 25 degrees, and started cruising around the area where this fella had told me he thought it would be. Came up on the bank, and it looked like a big dinosaur backbone coming up out of the mud.
There it was, maybe.
Staring at it, you instantly knew it was old. This was not a modern ship in any way. One of the big telltales, there were no threaded bolts of any kind, meaning nuts and bolts like we think of today. The whole thing was built basically with big nails. And then these huge iron drifts, which are about 2 feet long, and they just hammered those into the sides like a big nail to hold it all together.
Raines says there's a strong case that the wreck he found is the Clotilda, but they won't know for sure until more research is done.
The part that's actually buried in the mud, when they dig down in there, they may still find slave pens that were built in the ship. They may find manacles. They'll certainly find all kinds of supplies. We won't know until they begin looking in there whether this is actually the Clotilda or not, but it makes a really compelling case to do that digging.
It would be a historic find.
And the last person who came over on that ship died in 1935.
And the story of the Clotilda extends into the present day. On a recent episode of the PBS series Finding Your Roots, Questlove, the drummer from The Roots, learned that he was descended from the slaves on the Clotilda.
Charles Lewis, age 60, place of birth, Africa.
You just met your third great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents. These are your people, this is your blood.
Yeah, I am at a loss for words. I'm just so overwhelmed right now.
Raines has hopes the wreck may one day be put in a museum.
I knew this was going to be a really big deal, and it was going to be a profoundly powerful experience for many, many people, which was not really what I set out to do. So it all kind of came home like, oh boy, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to change people's lives.
This is InsideEdition.com.